This week, the United Nations General Assembly suspended Russia from the UN Human Rights Council. It cited gross and systemic violations and abuses of human rights by invading Russian troops in Ukraine.
Let's speak now to retired Major General Mick Ryan. Good to have you on the program again, and we are seeing some more horrific accounts coming out of Ukraine this week. Again, this train station attack that we are reporting on this morning. And the United Nations General Assembly, as Jez said, has suspended Russia from the Human Rights Council. This is a rare move. Just explain to us the significance of this.
Well, it is a rare move, but its impact on this war is likely to be extraordinarily limited. The Russians in the north have undertaken at least one significant massacre, and there's potentially more to be found up there. The train station massacre with that Tosca missile is just another example of whether they're on a committee or not, the Russians really don't care a lot for the civilians in a war zone.
Moscow has said that countries that voted in favour of the suspension will face consequences. What might that mean?
Well, firstly, the Russians will be angry with them, but that's probably not going to do too much. Possibly the Russians might conduct cyber operations or support the actions of criminals and activists against these countries. But at the end of the day, Russia's capacity to reach out and hurt those who voted against them is quite limited.
We are seeing some consequences for these actions, but what's the likelihood that anyone, particularly Vladimir Putin, will actually truly be held to account for what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, the reality is there will need to be collection of evidence over days, weeks, months, and potentially years for all these war crimes. But the important principle here is that we should never stop chasing those who are responsible, even if they hide behind international borders or billion-dollar houses somewhere in Russia. The international community, the ICC, must never stop chasing the perpetrators of these atrocities.
Let's talk about the latest on the battle for control. Russia is shifting its focus towards the east, towards eastern Ukraine. What's behind that shift?
Well, because they got beaten in the north. They can dress it up as withdrawals or reorientations as much as they want. The reality is they're outfought and outthought by the Ukrainians in the Battle of Kiev. The Russians have lost that. It's very unlikely we'll see too much of Russia in the north now. Putin needs something that he can portray as a victory in the east, and the two provinces of Luhansk and Donetsk there provide a foundation for that. But as we've seen, even in the last day, 6 or 7 Russian attacks in this area have been repulsed by the Ukrainians. They're not showing any improvement in their battlefield capacity at this point in time.
And how is Ukraine responding to that shift? What are the options for them?
Well, both countries, Russia and Ukraine, will be racing to reinforce these regions with soldiers, with equipment, with ammunition, with precision missile stocks, importantly. So we'll see a reorientation of Ukrainian defences over the coming days and weeks to meet that threat in the east, but also in the northeast and the south. So we'll see both countries reorient and race to gain an advantage in the east in the coming days.
And looking finally more longer term, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg this week warned that the war could last for months or even years. What does that mean for Ukraine as a country?
Well, Ukraine, remember, has dealt with war in the east since 2014. It's had these two provinces that have been effectively ruled by Russian proxies, or at least part of the provinces have been. So Ukraine has been dealing with this threat in the east for 7, 8 years now. I think the NATO Secretary General's prediction is probably more likely than not to take place. This will be a long, drawn-out struggle in the east for Ukraine and Russia.
Major General Mick Ryan, it's great to have you on the program this morning.
Thanks, Jo.